Pursuant to House Resolution 767, the House will proceed to the immediate consideration of House Resolution 755. The clerk will report the resolution.
House Calendar Number 61, House Resolution 755. Resolved that Donald John Trump, President of the United States, is impeached for high crimes and misdemeanors, and that the following articles of impeachment be exhibited to the United States Senate. Articles of impeachment exhibited by the House of Representatives of the United States of America in the name of itself and of the people of the United States of America against Donald John Trump, President of the United States of America, in maintenance and support of its impeachment against him for high crimes and misdemeanors. Article 1, Abuse of Power. The Constitution provides that the House of Representatives shall have the sole power of impeachment, and that the President shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. In his conduct of the office of President of the United States, and in violation of his constitutional oath faithfully to execute the office of President of the United States, and to the best of his ability.
What's up, friends? Welcome back to John Podcast Today. New impeachment articles are moving through Congress at a rapid pace, with charges ranging from abuse of power to tyranny, and legal experts note that the Senate can try a president even after leaving office. That means impeachment now could set the stage for criminal prosecution later, stripping Trump of the legal shield that has protected him from accountability. The scope of the impeachment effort is extraordinary when you actually examine the details. Representative Rashida Tlaib and other House members introduced HRES 353 on April 28, 2025, laying out 7 articles of impeachment against Trump that read like a comprehensive catalog of constitutional violations. The articles include obstruction of justice, which targets Trump's efforts to interfere with investigations and legal proceedings.
Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, and in violation of his constitutional duty to take care that the laws be faithfully executed, Donald J. Trump has abused the powers of the presidency in that, using the powers of his high office, President Trump solicited the interference of a foreign government, Ukraine, in the 2020 United States presidential election. He did so through a scheme or course of conduct that included soliciting the government of Ukraine to publicly announce investigations that would benefit his re-election, harm the election prospects of a political opponent, and influence the 2020 United States presidential election to his advantage. President Trump also sought to pressure the government of Ukraine to take these steps by conditioning official United States government acts of significant value to Ukraine on its public announcement of the investigations. President Trump engaged in this scheme or course of conduct for corrupt purposes in pursuit of personal political benefit. In so doing, President Trump used the powers of the presidency in a manner that compromised the national security of the United States.
Usurpation of Congress's appropriations power, which addresses his attempts to spend money that Congress never authorized. Abuse of trade powers and international aggression, which covers his unilateral tariff policies and threats of military action. Violation of First Amendment rights, which documents his attacks on free speech and press freedom. Bribery and corruption, which alleges he used his office for personal gain. And then, in a move that has no modern precedent, a final article simply labeled tyranny. This is not a single allegation or a narrow set of charges. This is a comprehensive indictment of Trump's entire approach to governance, an accusation that his conduct has been so fundamentally at odds with constitutional principles that it warrants the most serious charge available under the Constitution.
And undermined the integrity of the United States democratic process. He thus ignored and injured the interests of the nation. President Trump engaged in this scheme or course of conduct through the following means. 1. President Trump, acting both directly and through his agents within and outside the United States government, corruptly solicited the government of Ukraine to publicly announce investigations into A, political opponent, former Vice President Joseph R. Biden Jr., and B, a discredited theory promoted by Russia, alleging that Ukraine, rather than Russia, interfered in the 2016 United States presidential election. 2, with the same corrupt motives, President Trump, acting both directly and through his agents within and outside the United States government, conditioned 2 official acts on the public announcements that he had requested. A, the release of $391 million of United States taxpayer funds that Congress had appropriated on a bipartisan basis for the purpose of providing vital military and security assistance to Ukraine to oppose Russian aggression and which President Trump had ordered suspended, and B,
and it comes on top of HRES 415, introduced on May 14, 2025, a separate impeachment resolution that also charges Trump with high crimes and misdemeanors, expanding the menu of potential articles circulating in the House. The drafting of these articles is not a casual or symbolic exercise. By June 24, 2025, Fox News was reporting on draft impeachment text circulating on Capitol Hill that showed House members refining new articles specifically targeting Trump's most alarming recent conduct. The draft explicitly cited Trump's threats to jail opponents, his defiance of court orders, and his efforts to weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. The draft specifically referenced Trump's 2025 Justice Department speech in which he openly talked about putting critics in jail using language that legal experts described as dangerously authoritarian.
A head of state meeting at the White House, which the president of Ukraine sought to demonstrate continued United States support for the government of Ukraine in the face of Russian aggression. 3. Faced with the public revelation of his actions, President Trump ultimately released the military and security assistance to the government of Ukraine, but has persisted in openly and corruptly urging and soliciting Ukraine to undertake investigations for his personal political benefit. These actions were consistent with President Trump's previous invitations of foreign interference in United States elections. In all of this, President Trump abused the powers of the presidency by ignoring and injuring national security and other vital national interests to obtain an improper personal political benefit. He has also betrayed the nation by abusing his high office to enlist a foreign power in corrupting democratic elections. Wherefore, President Trump, by such conduct, has demonstrated that he will remain a threat to national security and the Constitution if allowed to remain in office, and has acted in a manner grossly incompatible with self-governance and the rule of law.
This is not abstract political rhetoric. These are concrete charges backed by Trump's own words and actions, documented in congressional records that will persist long after any individual vote. The articles are being drafted with care and precision because their purpose extends beyond immediate removal. They are building a permanent record of alleged criminal conduct that prosecutors could use once Trump is no longer protected by the presidency. Every speech he gives, every threat he makes, every court order he defies becomes another piece of evidence in this growing record, another charge that could be added to the articles, another potential basis for future criminal prosecution. The legal analysis supporting this strategy is coming from respected sources. Just Security and other outlets have published detailed examinations of the constitutional history surrounding post-term impeachment trials, concluding that the Senate can indeed hold a trial even after a president has left office.
President Trump thus warrants impeachment and trial, removal from office, and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States. Article 2, Obstruction of Congress. The Constitution provides that the House of Representatives shall have the sole power of impeachment and that the President shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. In his conduct of the office of President of the United States, and in violation of his constitutional oath, faithfully to execute the office of President of the United States, and to the best of his ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, and in violation of his constitutional duty to take care that the laws be faithfully executed, Donald J. Trump has directed the unprecedented, categorical, and indiscriminate defiance of subpoenas issued by the House of Representatives pursuant to its sole power of impeachment. President Trump has abused the powers of the presidency in a manner offensive to and subversive of the Constitution, in that the House of Representatives has engaged in an impeachment inquiry.
This is not a novel or fringe interpretation. It is grounded in historical precedent and scholarly consensus. When a president is impeached, the process does not automatically end when his term expires. The Senate retains jurisdiction to conduct the trial and render a judgment, including disqualification from future office. office. And while impeachment itself does not directly send anyone to prison, the formal record of alleged crimes and abuses it creates can be picked up by prosecutors later. Criminal charges for obstruction of justice, bribery, unlawful use of force, and other offenses documented in the impeachment articles could follow once the shield of presidential immunity is gone. This is the legal framework that has Trump genuinely terrified. He understands that the articles being drafted now are not just about removing him from office. They are about building a case that will follow him for the rest of his life, a case that could end with him in federal prison.
The irony of Trump's situation is almost too perfect to be believable. The man who has spent years threatening to jail his enemies, who has openly called for the prosecution of political opponents, judges, and journalists who have crossed him, is now watching his own rhetoric boomerang back with devastating force. The more he talks about jailing critics, the more impeachment articles and legal memos pile up documenting his own potential exposure. Every threat he makes becomes evidence against him. Every speech he gives adds to the record. Every defiant statement about ignoring court orders is recorded and preserved for future prosecutors to use. This is the boomerang effect that Trump never anticipated, the way his own words and actions are being systematically documented and transformed into the foundation of a case that could send him to prison. The fact that he keeps talking, keeps threatening, keeps escalating, only makes the situation worse. Each new speech provides more material for impeachment articles, more documentation for future prosecutors, more evidence of his willingness to abuse power and violate the law. The immediate political implications are equally significant. The fact that lawmakers are still drafting and filing impeachment articles in Trump's second term with a Republican-controlled Senate that would almost certainly acquit him demonstrates that this is not normal political opposition. This is a comprehensive effort to document Trump's abuses for the historical and legal record, to create a permanent account of his misconduct that will outlast any single Congress or administration. Even if the articles never reach a Senate trial, even if they are tabled on procedural grounds, they will remain in the congressional record as formal accusations of high crimes and misdemeanors. They will be available for historians, legal scholars, and future prosecutors to examine. They will serve as a warning about the dangers of unchecked executive power. And they will provide a foundation for criminal charges if and when Trump loses the protection of the presidency. This is the long game that Trump's opponents are playing, and it is a game that Trump is losing. He can rage against the impeachment efforts, call them partisan witch hunts, dismiss them as political theater, but he cannot erase the record that is being built. He cannot make the accusations disappear. He cannot prevent future prosecutors from using the documentation to build criminal cases. The specific charges in HRS 353 deserve closer examination because they reveal the comprehensive nature of the case being built against Trump. The first article, obstruction of justice, is not a new allegation. Trump has faced similar charges in previous impeachments, but the current articles document new instances of obstruction that have occurred during his second term. These include efforts to interfere with ongoing investigations, pressure on Justice Department officials to open or close cases based on political considerations, and attempts to obstruct congressional oversight. The article is carefully drafted to connect Trump's actions to specific legal violations, creating a record that could support criminal charges for obstruction of justice once he is out of office. The second article, usurpation of Congress's appropriations power, targets Trump's practice of spending money that Congress never authorized. This is a fundamental constitutional violation that goes to the heart of the separation of powers. The Constitution explicitly gives Congress the power of the purse, and Trump's repeated attempts to bypass that authority represent a direct assault on one of the core checks on executive power. Documenting these violations in impeachment articles creates a record that could support criminal charges for misuse of federal funds or other financial crimes. The third article, abuse of trade powers and international aggression, addresses Trump's unilateral tariff policies and threats of military action without congressional authorization. These are not just policy disagreements. They are constitutional violations that threaten the balance of power between the executive and legislative branches. Trump has imposed tariffs using emergency powers that legal experts say do not apply to trade disputes. and he has threatened military action against Iran and other nations without seeking congressional approval. The impeachment articles document these violations and create a record that could support criminal charges for exceeding constitutional authority. The fourth article, violation of First Amendment rights, targets Trump's attacks on free speech and press freedom. This includes his efforts to sue media organizations for critical coverage, his threats against journalists, and his attempts to punish news outlets that report unfavorably about him. The First Amendment is a cornerstone of American democracy, and Trump's attacks on it represent a fundamental threat to constitutional governance. Documenting these attacks and impeachment articles creates a record that could support criminal charges for conspiracy against rights or other offenses. The fifth article, bribery and corruption, alleges that Trump has used his office for personal financial gain, a charge that has followed him throughout his political career. The article documents specific instances where Trump has enriched himself or his businesses through official actions, including foreign governments patronizing his properties and special interests receiving favorable treatment in exchange for payments. Bribery is a specific crime with clear legal elements, and the impeachment articles provide detailed documentation that could support criminal prosecution once Trump loses presidential immunity. The sixth article, which is actually the seventh but labeled as tyranny, is the most dramatic and unprecedented charge. Tyranny is not a specific crime in the legal sense, but it serves as a comprehensive label for Trump's entire pattern of conduct, the cumulative effect of all the individual violations documented in the other articles. It is a charge that Trump has governed as a tyrant rather than a president, that he has systematically undermined constitutional limits and democratic norms, and that his actions represent a fundamental threat to American democracy. The inclusion of this article signals the seriousness with which the drafters view Trump's conduct. They are not just alleging isolated violations. They are alleging a comprehensive pattern of authoritarian behavior that requires the most serious response available under the Constitution. The draft articles circulating in June 2025 add even more specific charges. The threats to jail opponents are documented with references to Trump's own speeches and statements, including his 2025 Justice Department address, in which he openly called for prosecuting critics. The defiance of court orders is documented with specific examples of Trump ignoring or circumventing judicial rulings. The weaponization of DOJ is documented with evidence of Trump using the Justice Department to target his enemies and protect his allies. Each of these charges is supported by specific evidence, creating a detailed record that prosecutors could use to build criminal cases. The draft articles also address Trump's broader pattern of undermining democratic institutions, including his efforts to intimidate election officials, his attacks on the integrity of the electoral process, and his attempts to centralize power in the executive branch. This is not a narrow or partisan document. It is a comprehensive indictment of Trump's entire approach to governance, a detailed catalog of constitutional violations that spans multiple areas of law and policy. The legal significance of these articles extends beyond their immediate political impact. Every charge, every allegation, every piece of evidence documented in the articles becomes part of the permanent congressional record. That record can be accessed by prosecutors, used in criminal investigations, and introduced as evidence in criminal trials. It is a formal, official documentation of Trump's alleged misconduct, created by the branch of government with constitutional authority to investigate and charge presidents. Future prosecutors will not have to start from scratch if they want to pursue criminal charges against Trump. They will have a detailed roadmap created by the House with specific charges, specific evidence, and specific legal arguments already laid out. The impeachment articles are essentially a prosecution memo, a comprehensive argument for why Trump's conduct warrants serious consequences. And once Trump is no longer protected by the presidency, that memo can become the foundation for actual criminal prosecution. The experts at Just Security and other legal outlets have analyzed this question in detail, and their conclusion is clear. The Senate can hold an impeachment trial even after a president leaves office. Historical precedent supports this interpretation, and legal scholarship has consistently affirmed it. A successful impeachment now, even if it doesn't result in removal because Trump is already out of office, could still lead to this move to disqualification from future office, later erase the death, and the record created by the impeachment process, the evidence gathered, the testimony heard, the findings made can all be used in subsequent criminal proceedings. This is the shadow that hangs over Trump's presidency. Even if he survives impeachment, even if the Senate acquits him, the record of his alleged crimes will persist. And once he is no longer protected by presidential immunity, that record will become the basis for prosecutions that could send him to prison. The boomerang effect of Trump's own rhetoric is perhaps the most fitting element of this entire saga. The man who has made a career of threatening to jail his enemies is now watching those same threats become evidence against him. Every time he talks about putting critics in prison, he provides more material for impeachment articles. Every time he threatens a judge or a journalist, he adds to the record of his potential exposure. Every time he defies a court order or abuses his power, he documents his own criminal conduct. This is the irony that Trump cannot escape. The way his own words and actions are being systematically weaponized against him. He thought he was above the law, that he could say and do whatever he wanted without consequence. But the system is catching up with him. The impeachment articles are documenting his conduct, the legal experts are building the case, and the prosecutors are waiting for the moment when the shield of the presidency disappears. When that moment comes, Trump will face the consequences of his own actions. Consequences he cannot avoid and cannot escape. The broader implications of this process extend beyond Trump himself. The impeachment articles, the legal analysis, the ongoing documentation of constitutional violations, all of this represents a crucial test of American democratic institutions. The system is working the way it was designed to work. The House is exercising its constitutional authority to investigate and charge the president. The courts are providing the legal framework for accountability. The scholars are documenting the historical and constitutional basis for post-term prosecution. And the public is watching, learning, and forming judgments. This is how constitutional governance is supposed to function, through the interaction of multiple institutions, each playing its role in the system of checks and balances. Trump has tested that system more severely than any president in American history, and the system is holding. It is slow, it is messy, it is subject to political pressures and partisan divisions, but it is working. The impeachment articles are being drafted, the legal framework is being built, and the possibility of accountability, real accountability, is becoming more real every day. For Trump personally, the nightmare scenario is becoming increasingly difficult to avoid. He can rage against the impeachment efforts, call them partisan witch hunts, dismiss them as political theater. He can surround himself with loyalists who tell he can retreat to Mar-a-Lago and pretend the outside world doesn't exist. But he cannot escape the record that is being built. He cannot erase the articles of impeachment that are being filed. He cannot prevent future prosecutors from using that documentation to build criminal cases against him. The shield of the presidency is temporary. It will end when his term ends. And when it ends, Trump will face the full weight of the legal system. He will face charges for obstruction of justice, bribery, unlawful use of force, and all the other offenses documented in the impeachment articles. He will face trials in multiple jurisdictions. He will face the possibility of conviction and prison. This is the future that Trump fears, the future that keeps him awake at night, the future that impeachment is making more likely with every article that is filed and every legal expert who confirms the Senate can try him after he leaves. The fundamental question that remains is whether the impeachment process will continue to gain momentum. The articles have been filed, the drafts are circulating, the legal analysis is being published. But whether the House will actually vote to impeach Trump again, whether the Senate will actually hold a trial, whether the process will reach its conclusion before Trump leaves office, these questions remain unanswered. What is clear is that the record is being built regardless of the immediate political outcome. Every new article filed, every new charge documented, every new piece of evidence added to the congressional record, all of it contributes to a permanent archive of Trump's alleged misconduct. That archive will persist regardless of what happens in the current political moment. It will be available for historians, legal scholars, and prosecutors for generations to come. It will serve as a warning about the dangers of authoritarianism and the importance of constitutional limits. And it may ultimately provide the foundation for criminal prosecution that sends Trump to prison. The 2026 midterm elections add another layer of complexity to this situation. If Democrats gain control of the House or Senate, they could use the impeachment record to pursue further action. If Republicans maintain control, they could continue to block the process. But the record itself is permanent. The articles that have been filed, the charges that have been documented, the evidence that has been gathered, all of this exists independently of electoral outcomes. It will persist regardless of who wins the next election. It will be available for future Congresses and future prosecutors. It is a lasting testament to Trump's conduct and a permanent foundation for potential accountability. The impeachment record is more than just political theater. It is a constitutional document, a formal accusation of high crimes and misdemeanors, a permanent part of American history, and it will be studied and referenced for generations. The legal experts who have analyzed this situation are clear. Impeachment does not directly send anyone to prison, but it creates a formal record of alleged crimes and abuses that prosecutors can pick up later. Especially on issues like obstruction, bribery, and unlawful use of force, the impeachment record provides detailed documentation that can support criminal charges. Trump's own jail rhetoric is boomeranging against him. The more he talks about jailing enemies, the more impeachment articles and legal memos pile up, documenting his own potential exposure. The fact that lawmakers are still drafting and filing impeachment articles in Trump's second term shows he is governing under a cloud of potential removal and future prosecution, not normal political opposition. This is not politics as usual. This is a constitutional crisis unfolding in real time, with the stakes getting higher every day. Trump's nightmare scenario is not just losing office, it is losing the legal shield of the presidency and facing real prison risk down the line. That is the threat that impeachment represents. That is the threat that Trump fears. And that is the threat that the system is working to make real.